Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met at the Vostochny Cosmodrome. There, the Russian leader told reporters that the Koreans show interest in rocket technology. They are trying to develop space as well, and took part in a tour of the Cosmodrome with guests from North Korea. After the talks, see article on pages 1 and 2. Putin said the two sides also talked about military cooperation. There are certain restrictions, Russia complies with all these restrictions, but there are things we can certainly talk about, we are discussing, thinking about it. And there are prospects here too, he said in an interview with Rossiya 1 TV channel. The current UN sanctions regime against the DPRK, approved by the Security Council, includes a number of measures that seriously limit the country's space program, including its ability to cooperate with other countries in this area, said Ahmed Marzanov, a lawyer in the sanctions practice of the Delcraderi Bar Association. To organize cooperation in aerospace engineering, Russia or North Korea would need to apply to the Sanctions Committee of the Security Council for individual authorization. The same applies to the establishment of joint ventures with the participation of DPRK entities in the field of space activities. Marzanov allows for individual authorization only if the committee finds that it would not violate the goals of the current sanctions regime. UN Security Council resolutions are legally binding on all members of the organization and are directly applicable on their territories, Marzanov says. UN Security Council Resolution 1874 imposed sanctions in 2009 after the country conducted its second nuclear test, including a ban on arms imports from the DPRK. It envisages a ban on imports from North Korea of tanks, artillery, airplanes, helicopters, rocket launchers and ammunition for them, as well as services for training in the use of weapons. According to a source close to the Defense Ministry, there are other forms of near-war cooperation that are not subject to these and other sanctions, for example, holding scientific conferences. Presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters on September 13 that Russia will build relations with its neighbors in a way that is beneficial to Russia. In any case, the full range of relations implies both dialogue and interaction in sensitive areas, such as military interaction, exchange of views on the most pressing security issues. This will all be carried out as well, and all other issues concern only our two sovereign countries, he said. On the eve of Kim's visit, U.S. Presidential National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the DPRK would pay a price if it supplied Russia with weapons. Reports of munition supplies from the DPRK have been published in Western media for almost a year, with no concrete evidence cited. South Korean Foreign Ministry spokesman Lim Soo-sok limited himself to a comment in which he said Seoul was in close contact with Moscow and was monitoring Kim Jong-un's visit. It is still difficult to say what will fill the interaction between Russia and the DPRK in the military sphere, especially in the sphere of military technical cooperation, given that this is classified information, said Ivan Timofeyev, director of the Russian Council on Foreign Affairs. But practically for Moscow, after all the array of previously imposed restrictions, the threat of new sanctions for interaction with Pyongyang is unlikely to be any significant incentive, he said. As for the UN Security Council's restrictive measures regime, of which Russia's sanctions are a part, everything will depend on the directions in which cooperation between the two countries will develop. Obviously, the actions are contrary to the sanctions regime, in the establishment of which the Russian side itself participated, and they may cause reputational damage, Timofeyev said. Now the options of behavior and political costs of deepening cooperation with the DPRK are being weighed. Russia has serious opportunities in its hands to influence security in Northeast Asia, he continues. If such cooperation really starts actively, it will be a big step for Pyongyang to get out of international isolation, since now its only window to the world is China, and its presence is not particularly publicized. Although it is obvious to everyone, the expert says. Despite the serious sanctions pressure on North Korea, including from the UN, Pyongyang and Moscow can find methods of cooperation with a reduced level of risk for both sides, believes Alexander Vorontsov, head of the Department of Korea and Mongolia at the Institute of Oriental Studies of the Russian Academy of Sciences. The expert noted that Russia respects the UN Security Council resolutions but has the ability and motivation to establish new channels of communication with the DPRK.